And we're live with the amazing Sarah Jamieson. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Of course.
We're excited for that. It's, me especially, I've never met you in person, but I feel like I know a lot about you through the Onnit durability system and your own programs. I bought a couple of them, Bulletproof Shoulders and Hips, so I've been implementing a lot of the hard work that you've put in over the years, and I'm glad that we're able to, finally at least meet virtually in person and kind of talk about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I was thinking back, I was like, I've actually never met you guys in person. I've never met Josh in person, but because of the durability stream with Onnit, I feel like I've known you for like the past 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting for sure. And, I know my body feels great because of a lot of the system that you implemented with them. And I know a lot of my clients have gotten a ton of benefit. Anthony as well.
Same here. Seeing all the stuff you've done before with Onnit, conversations with Josh, it's just amazing what you're doing.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. I highly appreciate that. Impacting the world, right? That's why we're here.
So let's kind of jump right into it. Like, how did you get your start into fitness and what kind of fueled you to head down into more of the joint mobility, durability side of things?
It's always a good question. It's funny because when I look back at the lineage of where I've come from, I was always a poor athlete in high school. I was always like the short person that wanted to do the high jump and, the long jump and play basketball and volleyball and do all the things that genetically my body just wasn't in it for, but I had a lot of heart. When I was 19, I found long distance running. And so long distance running is how I kind of was able to really honor my body and what my body was able to do. And I found I had a passion for running very long distances, marathons, ultras. And so that was kind of my athletic debut into, the world of health and wellness. And I loved it so much that I made a career out of it. I started lifting at the age of 16, 17. My dad had back surgery. And so I would go with him to the gym and we'd do the things. And so I was introduced to weight training at a very young age as well. And when I was 19, I had a great opportunity to work in like first aid and doing a little bit of dryland training for West Vancouver's Midget A hockey team here in Vancouver. And, a coach knew I was going to school. He was a regular at my bartending job that I had. I think we all were in the service industry at some point in time.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, I know you're going to school, you're working 2 jobs already, but hey, there's a spot that's opened up if you want to get some real-time experience working with, athletes and young athletes and, kind of debuting into your career of training. And this is 1999. So we're talking a very different landscape that we see now. And it was an awesome opportunity for me. And I just fell in love with it. And I've worked in big box gyms. I've worked in boutique gyms, independent gyms. I've worked in clinics, physiotherapy clinics, and private healthcare establishments. So I've been able to see the spectrum of, where the health, fitness, performance, and clinical intervention modalities kind of fit in and around both general population, athletic populations, and pain populations. And very early in my career, I want to say probably 2002, 2003, a lot of my clients were just showing up with aches and pains and persistent pain, shoulder issues, back issues, plateauing in their fitness. And I was working at a big box gym at the time. And I was like, there's something to this. If 90% of my clients are just having aches and pains all the time, I feel like we're missing something in this industry. And this was really at the beginning of the functional fitness realm. Like this is when functional fitness was just starting to make its debut onto the scene. Before that, it was aerobics, weight training for the most part, right? We're talking late 90s. Yeah. So for me, I was like, I think there needs to be a fit here because I'm not being able to be as successful as a trainer as I want to be if I'm not identifying and addressing some of the daily aches and pains that my clients are having daily. And I just started deep diving into and getting my hands on everything that was, how to rehab the shoulder. And we used the term rehab back in the day, for anything that was not weight training or aerobics based. And I just started really deep diving into joint health. And then I started deep diving into pain education and sitting on a board with a nationally recognized pain nonprofit here in Canada. And I still volunteer with them now. And just really deep diving into, you know, what is the longevity of the human structure? Like what breaks down as we age, mechanically, neurologically, biochemically, and how can we fill in some of the gaps that we're not addressing? And so I started looking at that, you know, into the early 20s, and that has fueled the work that I've done for the past, you know, 20 years or whatever, being in my early 40s now, is I've been able to see that spectrum. And yet in the last 10 years, chronic pain stats haven't changed much. They haven't changed much. It was 1 in 10 years ago, and now it's 1 in 5.
Yeah, it's kind
of
worse.
So more people are actually showing up with pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very Coles Notes version of the last 20 years of my life, but
it's amazing.
So why do you think that it's so important that we focus on joint health, right? So, because like you kind of mentioned before, right? So many people just want to get in the gym and throw some weights around or go out there and run. But, you know, a lot of my clients, and I know a lot of Anthony's clients, have actually found a lot more benefit in the low intensity joint mobility movement aspect of training than they have in the past few years. You know, being able to, you know, pull 225 off the floor, or be able to squat 225. You know, they tell me, you know, I don't know, it seems like we're not doing a whole lot, but yet I feel better than I ever have. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that people are so hesitant at first to maybe dive into what seems to be like, you know, nothing work, but ends up bringing that huge benefit to them in the long run?
I think a lot of it is the narrative that the fitness industry tells and has been telling for the past, you know, 2 decades, which is embrace the suck, you know, suck it up, man up. All of these really like high, you need to be hustling and grinding in order to make substantial progress in anything that you're doing. We want to be shredded. We want to be doing this. We want to be doing that. It doesn't fit for everybody. And not a lot of people can compete, whether it be professionally or just recreationally at that level without having a breakdown at some point in time. You know, joint health is so integral because it's the number one thing that diminishes as we age. So if we look at, you know, an infant, for those that have kids, you see babies that are these little wet noodles that have to earn their stability in the world. And then as adults, we have to re-earn our mobility because we sit from primary school all the way up to university. To a lot of our jobs as trainers, we're demonstrating and standing on one side of our body all the time. So we're creating asymmetries and stress loads and strains throughout our careers. And anybody that has a professional career of any kind is clocking the hours. And so these things add up over time. And when we do look at, you know, how the body manifests pain, it's very abstract and complex, and it's unique to each individual. But a big concept of that is lifestyle and how we're living our lives. So if you're 40 and you're training like you're in your 20s, you will have a breakdown at some point in time. It's like you can't drive a car on a crappy engine. Right? You need to be able to do the tune-ups and the maintenance and put air in the tires and all those things. Mm-hmm. And joint health is really the window or gateway to really leveling up and ensuring that you have a body that's resilient, because at the joint level, all of inflammation and neuroreceptors and all these types of positive things can come out of just focusing on the joints. If you can't move a joint through its natural range of motion or usable range of motion, how are you going to influence elasticity of tissues? How are you going to influence the lymphatic system that sits in and around those joints and the bone structures? And so we can get super complex with it, but moral of the story is we all going to age. And we all going to get stiffer because inflammation increases as we age. Inflammation in higher quality also reacts differently in tissues and in bones. So we need to be doing our due diligence now at any age so that in our 60s, 70s, and 80s, you know, I can pick up my grandkids. That's going to be my goal. I can be able to walk to the store and carry my groceries when I'm 85. If I fall down, I'm not going to slip a hip and have to go in for surgery. Those are the things that, you know, we want to be thinking of. The getting shredded is great, but it's not for everybody. And even if it is, the recovery component and longevity component needs to be a larger percentage of what we focus on as we age, because we need it.
So knowing the importance of joint health And obviously comparing from back then in the 90s, early 2000s to where we are now, there's a lot more awareness on it. But at the same time, you still see a lot of people being receptive to it and pushing back. Maybe not pushing back, but just not allowing themselves to maybe bring in this style or introduce this component into their, daily regimen. What is the best way that you approach it with your clients or new people that you see, and maybe have a hard time struggling with wanting to introduce this into their life? What's the best way that you approach it with them? Because I know there's a lot of coaches out there that maybe this is new to them and they just started learning about this, or maybe they're having a hard time getting this across to their client. And I'm sure that you can help them out with showing them or guiding them the right way to be able to add this on to their daily routines.
For sure. And, I think a big part of his re-education is we only know what we know, right? So if we enter into this industry and we are inundated with so much data and so many systems, so many processes, it can be really challenging to pick one or figure out, how do I integrate all of the things that I want to be able to do? People come to you for training. They come to you to get sweaty. They come to you to work out. And so there's the want versus need conversation as well. And so a lot of the times, especially when I'm working with new trainers for business coaching, is, we have to give people what they want, but we also, as professionals, we have a responsibility to keep them safe and to also ensure that we are focusing on the longevity aspect. And so a lot of the times that requires some re-education and changing the narrative around, how we're training. It takes exploring and asking better questions for the client of, what's your experience with movement? What's your experience with strength training? Your experience with injury? And understanding their story and their narrative, their beliefs around, how far they've come and what they're coming to you for. And so that's more of a behavioral kind of conversation around getting to know and creating rapport and confidence, and then being able to sprinkle it in. So one of the things that, over the course of the last, I would say 5 years of really deep diving into the terms that we're now using of durability, and part of that has been, with On It Academy and building out their infrastructure and system of it with durability, but also taking a step back and being like, how do you apply this to general population? Just people that may not be training with you all the time. They also may not train with you long-term, because our job is to create a resilient human that can go out into the world. So when I was surveying and beta testing the daily durability system, one of the things that came back was the 1%, which is 15 minutes a day. Small improvements on a daily spectrum that eliminates a lot of the barriers that clients and people have in general, which is time, cost, and distance. If you can get somebody moving at the bookends of their day, morning or evening, when they have the most control over their schedule and time, 15 minutes showed that most people would be able to accommodate that. 20 and 30 minutes was a little bit too long, and under 10 minutes just doesn't have any real return on investment. So by getting somebody to wake up in the morning, create space for themselves, create self-care for themselves, move every joint in any capacity, is the easiest point of entry. Then as a trainer, we can sprinkle it into their warm-ups, their cool downs, their recovery sets in between lifting. There's lots of ways that you can get really creative with it. The concept is consistency and finding what's going to work best for that client.
Yeah, I think, across the board with anything you do in life, consistency is the number one thing, right? If you do things for a week and then give up, you're never going to see results. And we've mentioned these terms, durability and resiliency, a couple times already. And I wanted to get your take or your definition on what does it mean to be durable and what does it mean to be resilient with your training and just in life?
That's a great question too. So the concept that I like to acknowledge when I talk about durability is that durability is the ability to withstand or resist wear and tear, and without physically breaking down from the things that you want to do in life. So health and fitness are very different, right? If we, put a line in the sand, health is being free of injury and free of illness. And fitness is what we do for 4% of our day a few times a week, right? So an hour for the most part. And generally speaking, most people only work out or train a few days a week if we're talking about general population. So durability isn't just what we do in the gym, it's how we sustain a quality of life throughout the transitions of our life. And that has to also extend past the 60-minute session. So when we talk about resiliency and being durable, it's not just about what you do in that 1 hour. It's what you do every hour and every minute of your day. It's the intention that you bring. So being resilient is being able to withstand the wear and tear on the physical body, on the emotional and mental body. And what I can say is being a new mom-ish for the past 2.5 years and having 17 months of postpartum chronic pain and postpartum depression, that to me is being resilient, is being able to overcome and sustain and meet your body and your emotional self where it needs to be on a daily basis. In the training world, it means that we have a responsibility to ensure that our clients are not going to be harmed physically. We're not going to overreach and give them too much too soon. And those are all things that, really create a resilient athlete, a resilient person that is wanting to be physically fit.
So at what point in your life did you notice that this change had to happen for you as a person, for your own body and health, and as a coach as well, where you had to integrate this into play to be able to get the best results out of everything?
So as a coach, so two things is on my coach brain, when I'm wearing my coach hat, is in around 2005, I was working for a boutique style studio here in Vancouver. And an individual came to me and I worked with him for about 2.5 years at this particular location. I've been working with him for 17 years. He was a military officer and he had been deployed to Afghanistan. He's a captain. His land vehicle was blown up by an IED. Oh. And 80% of his body had shrapnel wounds, second, third degree burns. He single-handedly pulled his entire platoon out of the land vehicle. Wow. And he came to me. And amazing man, brilliant man. And he came to me and he was unable to walk that well. He had gained a lot of weight, obviously, from being in and out of hospitals for 9 months. And his goal was to get back to active duty. And he wanted to kind of get back to his team and, do the things. And through working with him both on the training floor, and at the time I was also teaching like yoga therapy. So I was in the yoga studio with him 2 days a week, and then on the training floor 3 days a week. And we would have these beautiful conversations around the psychology of what he was going through. He was struggling with PTSD at the time. He's very open about it still. And that is when, for me, the shift happened as a coach. That for me was, this isn't just about somebody who needs to be professionally fit for what he does because it's life or death. This is somebody who has a kid who wants to continue to play recreational hockey 20, 30 years from now, watch his kids grow up, do all of those things. And for me, that was the shift of, we need to be doing better and we need to be offering our clients more than just reps and sets. And so a lot of that was working with his story, his narrative, his beliefs around movement and training and injury and where he was as an individual on the planet. And we have continued that conversation well into after he retired. Now he's a coach of his son's hockey team. He plays professional hockey in the sense of coaching. And he's continuing the lineage. And for me, that has been an amazing story because it's been 17 years I've been able to continually work with him. As a person, professionally, as a person, I've been a long distance runner for my whole life. And in my 20s, you can run the marathons, you can do the training, you can do all the things. In my early 30s, I had some complications. My body stopped responding to the recovery. My body hormonally started to shift as well. And I started to have a lot of aches and pains, and I would push through it because at the time I had committed to raising some funds for an initiative that I called Run for a Cause at the time, which is a 10-year passion project. And I had overcommitted myself to running over 9,000 kilometers in a year with all of the training and all of the races, and my body broke down. I was on a 74K run. It was in March. It was really crappy weather. It was icing rain. And I fell down on my knees and was slightly hypothermic. My body just shut down. And I ended up having to have major surgery after that. My appendix basically blue. And it was a very scary time because my identity was also wrapped up in all of that, in who I was as a runner, who I was as a trainer, advocating for pain, advocating for durability and joint health. And here I was basically not listening to my own self, my own body. And that for me was the pivoting point of we always need to check back in and practice what we're preaching. And it's not about going hard, and it's not about the overcommitting and the overreaching. It's about really understanding your biology, your psychology, and what your body can do, but doing it from a place of nurturing your body, not completely wrecking your body.
I love
And
that. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just
Yeah.
going to say, I love that the fact that you shared that, because I just feel like a lot of people need to hear those things, because it's like we can all relate. Like many times in our life, it's those triggers, those aha moments, those, you know, whether it's good, bad, you know, something big happens where it just makes a huge shift, whether it's professionally or personally in our life. And I just appreciate you sharing that, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be able to take that information and.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important too, because trainers are humans. We go through the same things. We go through the same challenges. And we ask ourselves the same questions, like, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? Because we're all experiencing life. It's the lived experience. After my son was born, that again was a major transition, because I've spent pretty much most of every day of my life since I was 19, either in a gym or on the road or doing something. And for the first time in my life, I'm not going to the gym regularly, and I haven't been able to, because even though I did everything right leading up to the pregnancy, we had major complications, miscarriages, and my body just didn't respond well to the birthing. And so 46 hours of labor later, and my body having to go 17 months.
Trooper.
Right. Impressive.
That's why guys don't get pregnant, because I don't know if we can handle that.
I'd tap out.
Oh,
30 seconds into it, I'd be like, I'm done. Where's the epidural?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is, slight sidebar, but we did 32 hours at home because I really wanted to have a home birth, do it the primal way. I was like, my doula was all set to be like, best rep, last rep. That was going to be her thing. And, but we did a hospital transfer. I was like fully epidural, like stick it in, do what you need to do. Yeah. My husband accidentally brought the wrong iPod. So I was wearing an AC/DC shirt, and my kid was literally born to Daft Punk and Chemical Brothers. Nice. Nice. Yeah. It's actually a really funny story, but 46 hours. So the body needed recovery, and apparently it needs 2 years for me.
Wow. So that was 46 hours hospital and then 30 at home, or
so
combined?
32 at home and the rest
32,
in the hospital.
Gotcha.
That's remarkable. Yeah. But I think it's pretty interesting how, you and Anthony were talking about these narratives and these definitions that we use to, or that we create for ourselves depending on what we're doing, right? Like whether it's you're a trainer, like, okay, what's the definition of being a trainer, and what are the little subcategories that I need to check off? Or, being a mother, am I supposed to experience the things I'm experiencing? Is like that what a normal mother would experience? Or in Anthony's case, a father. I don't have any kids, but as a brother, like what are the boxes that I need to check? Like, and if I don't check those, I'm not a good brother. And you take a step back and you think like, well, what the fuck does any of that even mean? Like who defines whether or not I'm a good brother other than my sister, or, your son for you, or Anthony's daughter for him being a father, So I think, and Anthony mentioned the aha moment, right? I think when you can take a step back and kind of break free of these, these false or partial narrative, these partial truths that we give ourselves, I think that you're able to kind of look at things from a much broader perspective and be able to really start to love yourself and love the process that you're going through.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, especially in this day and age, is that people want to label and put you in a box. And because we have so many systems that people subscribe to, and it can really create the opportunity for you to lose yourself, like a negative opportunity for you to lose yourself and understand who you are in the world and what are you doing. But I think, in the simplest terms, we're all humans doing the same thing. We're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to live our best lives. And I think the less labels that we actually have and subscribe to, the better, because then we don't get pigeonholed or put in a box, or we don't put ourselves in a box, because you're going to spend your whole life dismantling false narratives that you think that you're subscribing to that you're not. And even for me as a mother, I have become way more feminine. I have lived a very masculine lifestyle because I felt I need to be more masculine as a woman in the industry to make it in the industry. And that was a narrative that I held on to for most of my career. I need to man up. I'm going to wear baggy clothes because I don't want to show my body, because I want to not be seen that way. I want to be seen for what's going on in here. Mm-hmm. And there are all these false narratives that I think we all subscribe to. Is when you do have a life-shifting moment or an aha moment, all those Post-its get to be put on the table, and you have the opportunity to rip it up.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that for especially the last 2.5 years. Is I'm just, as Glennon Doyle says, I'm just fucking ripping up memos like there's no tomorrow. Like, fuck that shit. I'm not that anymore. No, not that either. Right?
Yeah.
The less memos I have, the better.
Yeah, we have these conversations all the time. Like, what are we thinking about right now, and why are we making it such a big concern? Let's just find a solution and move forward, instead of making it be a bigger deal than it really needs to be at that current time. Or maybe it is a big deal and we need to really sit down and figure it out and really hash through some things. But I couldn't agree more. I think the less labels we put on ourselves, and the more we just start to define ourselves and each other as just human beings with different personalities and different quirks, we're going to be able to accept each other a little bit more.
And I think now more than ever, going through the times that we're going through now, it's just an important way to be able to step back, analyze, create awareness, check yourself, be real with yourself, be truthful, and dive deep in what's most important, and I think when we can hone in on that, amazing things start to happen. And then we start realizing how much more control you have of your space and yourself.
Yeah, and I 100%. And I think, we, especially in the time that we're living in, is that so many people want to contribute. So many people want to help and support and facilitate and do the things. But the most important thing that we can do is to sit back and check ourselves. And to really unravel and be uncomfortable with the things that we need to discern, we need to distill, we need to dismantle within our own human psychology, human biology, and where we're fitting into the world and what we're subscribing to, what we're contributing to, the affiliates, the partnerships, all of those things has to start from in here. We have to start from the heart first. Then we can start from the logical mind of how are we contributing and move from that space. Because if we don't focus on that internal body first, that internal mind, then we can't be the type of individual that we want to be. And for me, I continually check myself of, making sure I'm not being a martyr to motherhood, and to make sure that my son understands that a woman and a mother doesn't forget herself and abandon herself and her needs and her dreams and her vision, because he is going to be a representation of that. And I think we always need to tie it back into that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make. I saw that in my own childhood at times. My mother would try to overcompensate for the fact that she didn't have maybe the best role models growing up. I mean, my grandmother was great, but my grandfather, not so much. So she always tried to do all the things that we needed to do. And, as I got older, I could kind of look back and kind of look at the situation and go, well, like, you're not really taking any time for yourself. You're making all these sacrifices all the time, and there's no time for you to decide who you're going to be. And now that my sister and I are out of the house, she's confused at sometimes. She doesn't necessarily know what to do all the time. I'm like, well, now's the opportunity that you can take that you never took, even though you maybe should have, now utilize that opportunity to really find out who you are and what your passions are, instead of just taking us to football or taking us to basketball or taking us to the movies.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things like sorry about just bringing up what Josh said. I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of the important things that you're currently doing for yourself, so that way you could be the best version for your family, for your kids. Something me and Josh talked about all the time, like, sometimes you have to be selfish in a good, healthy way so you can be selfless to more people. So what do you do for yourself? Like, what do you do to show up every day the best version you can?
Well, it's funny because I've been having a lot of these conversations with, like I have a counselor who's also a grief counselor, like therapist, whatever. She's a spiritual guide. She's a lot of things, with her and, you know, mama friends and things like that. It can be very easy to get lost especially as a new mom, because my son is still breastfeeding as well. And we co-nap and we co-sleep. So there is a lot of time clocked on the mama body, still. And so for me, one of the things that I've really had to determine is there's a difference between self-care and self-nurturing. Self-care, I do every single day. And I try to align some time for myself. We live by the beach, so I like to go for an ocean swim.
There you go.
I like to just sit down, look at the vastness of the world. And for me, a lot of it has been slowing down and doing less. Listening to my body, eating foods that are good, but also having donuts because I love them. And that makes me feel good.
The best.
Right? You know, everybody loves donuts. I mean, come on. And so a lot of it has been also, you know, I'm wearing a lot of hats. And so being a mom, being a business owner, being a wife, all of these things can be really challenging. And it's easy to say I'm doing all of these things and I'm doing all this great stuff. I think for me is the biggest thing is stepping back and for the first time in my life, really honoring the emotions that are coming up, honoring the complexity of the situation, that it's not just about me anymore, but at the same time, I have to make sure that I am taking time for me every single day. My husband's very supportive with that, obviously. You know, so if it's going for a run and I feel like that's what my body needs, I do it. If it's meditating because I feel like I just need to create space for quiet, then I do that. And sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 60. It depends on the day. But as long as I am taking a step back, sitting on the edge of my bed and asking myself, what do I need today? To me, that is the most profound thing that I can do, because every day is slightly different, even though with a kid there's routine. But it's just, you just don't know what you're getting with a little human. Oh, yeah. So for me, that is really the thing. And from a training perspective, I mean, this is the first time in my life I've never been on a training program. I've tried to do a training program. I can't stick to it because I just I can't be in the gym 4 or 5 times a week. I even have a gym in my garage and I can't get into that thing 4 or 5 times a week.
I definitely know the feeling.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cute is 11 seconds, but so it really is looking at being a human first and being, you know, the trainer, the mother, the athlete, the whatever label I'm going to choose to adorn myself with today. But it's what do I need as a human to really be present and to live my best life right now. And that might sound altruistic, and there's lots of days where I cry, and maybe that's just what I need. It's just bawl my ass out in the shower on the ground, because that happens too. So
I think as we get older, I know that this has definitely been the case with myself. You know, we become more in tune with how our emotions really are playing a role in the decisions that we make, and just how important in general our emotions are, right? Like you said earlier, you found in the past that you've had to like kind of repress some of these, I can't be girly because, you know, I work in a man dominated field. But why not? You know, like we try to hide these things, these emotions, because we want other people to like us for who they are instead of liking us for who we are. And I think as we gain more experience in life and in your job and your occupation, you start to realize that you'll attract the people that you want to attract when you are your true self, when you are the person that you want to be, instead of who the people in the room want you to be.
It's true. And I think, you know, for me personally, I grew up in a household that I was taught at a very young age to control my emotions, to be a blank slate. There was some physical abuse and some mental emotional abuse. My mom was also an alcoholic and an addict. So it was, she's a beautiful woman, was a beautiful woman. But you know, she was a very tough woman. She was strong, in spirit. My stepfather was not. And I was just taught at a very young age to man up. To, you know what, if you're a man, maybe you don't get hit. If you're a man, maybe you don't get walked over. And that was a narrative that literally sustained me until my mom passed in my early 30s, which was also when I had the physical breakdown, because a lot of emotion just needed to be put out into the world. And to this day, and especially being a new mom, is all of that has come back in the last 2.5 years. So I think the other thing we need to realize is the transitions and the experiences we have as children, as adolescents, as early adults. When there is trauma of any kind, whether it be mild, moderate, or severe, it comes back because there are triggers and patterns, and it's the life's work to continually flush it out, to continually feel and be in the heart versus always in the head. And I've spent most of my head being in the head and not in the heart. And especially through transitions of life, whether it be parenthood as a caregiver, a mother, a father, an uncle, whatever it is we try on these experiences again, and we need to check ourselves and be very resilient with the emotional spectrum of what are we feeling. And I think it's also really important for trainers as leaders in the world to also be very transparent, as long as you're okay and comfortable with not reliving it. Be comfortable with telling your story, because that story has a profound effect on other people. And as you mentioned, the audience that you're going to attract as well, of people that want to have camaraderie and have the confidence to say, hey, I think a lot of what's going on with my body isn't musculoskeletal. I think it might be from some trauma that I've had, because you can't dissect the two.
Right.
Everything is integrated.
Yeah.
And that ties back to durability, joint health, resiliency, longevity. All of these things are intertwined, and it's a rich tapestry that we need to continually be observing throughout our life.
I love the fact that you mentioned about that, about sharing your story. You go on and see, and there are people doing it, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that like to hold on to their story because they feel like they're going to be attacked, or they're going to feel like they're looking at you weird, or that you don't fit in, or, that's not a good thing. But more people need to hear that. So I'm glad you brought that up. And hopefully for our listeners, those who aren't sharing your stories, go out there and share your stories. It's what makes you unique. It's what lets you share your experiences and relatability, like you mentioned, to the world. And, from there, it'll just build you those group of people that's who you were meant to serve or help. And be able to help them deal with their issues. Like you're saying, with their health and fitness, now you have something relatable where now they can become your client possibly because you have that relatability. So, I think that's a big component right there that you mentioned. And going off that, you working with some other coaches, do you guys also work with your coaches on that aspect where not just the fitness education, but more on the education of teaching them, hey, building relationships, connections with your clients, share your stories. Do you guys go through a protocol, or do you guys do something like that when it comes to coaching young coaches?
100%. One of the biggest benefits, I think, 15 years ago was I started deep diving into NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming. And so I've been a practitioner and a licensed practitioner of that for the past 15 years, which is really the psychology of communication and neurology and language. So when I'm working with trainers, the very first thing that we talk about, and again, it's what we want to make sure is that we're not deep diving into counseling or psychology. Those are completely different spectrums. But all it really comes down to is effective communication. Really, at the end of the day, it's effective communication and taking more time to listen and to ask better questions. So it's repositioning the language and the communication that we use, and creating space for more of those moments where we can just listen and be empathetic and compassionate versus always having to be like getting into the gym. And it starts at the intake process. I've on my intake form, which is slightly longer than most, it's about 26 pages, but the first page is your story. And that's all it says. Tell me a little bit about your story. Why are you here? And that is it. Instead of saying, tell me about your injuries and, what's going on in your body and all these things, it's what is your story? And then understanding that, the behavior of people don't change just based on data points and perceived benefits and all these things that we use as trainers to be like, but if you just did this, you'd be able to fix this, is they change based on meaning. If you need to connect with a client around meaning, what is meaningful to them? A lot of people don't like exercise. They like to move. Some people love to train, they don't like to move. So it depends on the person's beliefs and values and behaviors and lived experience of where they're coming from. It's kind of the analogy I like to use with the squat. I've been talking a lot about squat on IG this week too, but the squat pattern, I mean, we have femurs, we have a pelvis, everybody's born with them for the most part, but they're shaped differently for every human on the planet. And every person that comes in and you test them, they're going to have, even if they show up with exactly the same landmarks and markers, they're going to need different programming because their lived experience is different, right? So how they came to you is going to have different emotions, different psychology, different biology, different upbringing. All of those things are really just need to be factored in, and that just takes time. You don't get that in one consultation. You get that over the longevity of working with somebody, but every session should have some form of getting to know your client better. It's like dating, right? So it's like you get to know somebody on your first date, you get to know them a little bit on your second. You know, I'm still getting to know my husband, and we've been married for, a few years. So it's something that takes time, but I think where the industry needs to move to is less quantifiable data and more quality. So the quality is going to be the lived experience, is going to be asking better questions, listening more, and creating more meaning for people that is outside the, getting shredded and doing all the badass things that we as trainers, we love the sexy shit, and so does our clients. A lot of our clients do too, but it's not going to be what sustains their life long term.
Yeah. Oh, we're in Miami, so everyone's all about the vanity
You're
muscles.
in the pretty places.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I just want bigger arms. Like I just want a bigger chest. Like all right, but you also have 30 pounds we have to lose. So let's focus on that. And I promise you that'll make your chest look a lot bigger. You'll be fine. We can do two at the same time. How do we go about listening better? How do we go about asking those deeper meaning questions? Where we're really going to find that substantial information that's going to lead to that turning point for our clients and the people that we work with?
I think a large part of it, we all run on education, right? And I think a lot of the time is we tend to gravitate towards the biological or musculoskeletal things like the FRCs, the FMSs, the ONITs, the things that are applications of movement. I think for trainers, especially for new trainers, is really investing the time, energy, and resources into learning effective communication, into learning behavioral modification coaching, so behavioral coaching as well, and looking at lots of organizations already use those tools and applications, but some of them don't. So when we are sitting down going, hey, I need continuing education for, to reassert myself, maybe I should consider taking something other than, application of something on my body. Maybe I should take something like effective communication. Maybe I should take behavioral coaching or learning how to create rapport better with my clients, or how to build out a better consultation process. Things that create space for clients to feel that they are seen, heard, and validated within those experiences. It doesn't mean that we're tapping into psychological things. We're not counselors. We're not dealing with mental health. All we're doing is creating the space to ask better questions so that we can gather more information, because the more information we have, the better we can train and coach and support our clients.
Yeah, I always try to make the analogy to athletics, right? Everyone understands sports pretty well for the most part. And I always try to use it as like, okay, think of yourself as like a general manager for a football team or for a baseball team, and you're going into the draft. Like the more information you have about all of these players or this one specific player that you're trying to draft, the better decision you can make when it comes crunch time, right? When the clock's really on to like, okay, should we draft this person? Should we invest our future into this person? Should we invest our resources into this person? It's the same thing with your clients, right? The more information that you can collect on them from all these different aspects of their life, not just the physical attributes, in athletics, it's how far they can hit the ball or run, or, how quick their agility is. In our clients' lives, it could be, what their weight is, what their blood pressure stats are, all the health biomarkers. But it also comes down to like, what's their sleeping habits, what's their dietary intake like, what is their relationship with food like, besides just writing it down on a piece of paper for you when you need it. You know,
Yeah.
how do they feel when they really pick up a fork or they're going to order something on a menu? That emotional connection is just as important, like you were saying, you know. And I think the less surface level questions we ask and the deeper we can really dive into these things, and part of that in my eyes is that people feel uncomfortable asking hard questions, right? Because one, they see themselves having difficulty with it, right? And they're either putting on this facade of who they should be while struggling with the same things. Like I struggle with my eating habits at times, just like my clients do, you know. Like you said, you like donuts, I like donuts, I like candy a lot too, you know. I'll binge on candy, you know, for a week straight. I'm like, oh man, why does my stomach hurt so bad? And then, oh shit, it's a candy, dumbass, of course. Like, you know, so, and then I go to them and I tell them the same thing. I'm like, oh, I love candy. I feel like crap because I ate so much candy this week. And they're like, you eat candy? Like, what do you know, like, I thought you were this. I'm like, just because I can have abs sometimes doesn't mean, you know, I can't also hide a little bit of fluff underneath a heavy t-shirt, you know? So I think having that bit of relatability with your clients, but also, you know, giving them that space to be able to feel free to open up with you. And that does come with time. Like you said, you know, you're not going to be able to build this substantial. I mean, Anthony and myself, I'm sure you know, like we've trained the same people 5, 6, 7 years now. You can't, you know, fake that type of relationship that you build with those people. You know, they're no longer clients, they're family, and they'll trust you with anything, you know. And I think once you can get to that point, that's when you can really start to elicit serious change in people's lives, because they trust you much more than just like, okay, this is like an X's and O's type person.
So speaking about like piggyback off what you were saying, Josh was saying, this whole connection factor, what are things that you're doing right now, just because due to the times, how are you still building that relationship, the connections, the trust factor, you know, being able to keep all of that, what you would do in an in-person way? What are you doing right now that's maybe the same, different? Did you have to adapt to new tools, new tactics, newer ways of thinking? I would love to hear that, because I'm sure a lot of people would definitely be able to benefit from that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when COVID obviously hit and the protocols came out, is I had just returned to a private practice. So in January, I went back to actually seeing clients in person in the gym a little bit more. So my practice is obviously smaller, but I already had an online infrastructure built out through the different products I have and through remote coaching. So it wasn't a massive switch for me to take my in-person clients to an online experience. But some of the things that did come to fruition was I was just starting a durable movement series, a 4-week class series that was in person, that I then had to take into my space you see a little bit upstairs in my loft here, which is obviously a different experience. And one of the things that really kind of came to fruition was that we just needed some more time to connect. So the beauty about the remote or online environment is that a lot of the times I'm doing this with my client. I'm not demonstrating exercises and putting them through a workout in the same. What we're doing is actually talking about why we're programming certain exercises, why we're testing certain things. We have actually more access and more time to have those deep dive conversations. Because I think as trainers, and especially when we're in a gym environment, we feel we got to like, okay, we got to get to the next exercise. We got to move over here. We got to do this. We got to keep the heart rate up. We got to do the things. And while that is obviously beneficial, because if you don't do those things, goals aren't met, the other benefit of being able to actually just take it back a notch and to like have a conversation and then maybe get to those things, or have different ways of delivering those systems. I have a very extensive library and tutorial library. So most of my actual online coaching is actually more NLP coaching, to be honest with you, like life coaching. And we talk about what are some of the other things that you're having a challenge with outside of the either getting to your exercise or not being able to do the daily 15 minutes. Like what are the things that are coming up for you? And we can deep dive a little bit more into that. And then I can program for them and feel confident because we've done the due diligence. And there's the follow-up of having different ways of delivering the system that's specific and meaningful for the client. And I think as we continue to move through this uncertain time of COVID and the global uprisings that we're seeing of dismantling systems, is we're going to need to actually create the space for more of that. So it's not just the session starts at 1 minute and it ends at 59 minutes. I tend to charge for a session, and that session can be 60, it can be 75 minutes, sometimes it's 90. And I ensure that that perceived value is there, and that we have the opportunity to be able to scale that instead of the conveyor belt of hour to hour to hour, which ideally I've been used to for most of my career. And being able to create a connection with somebody that you can't tangibly, touch, because that's a protocol that we're not allowed to do anymore.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
that's amazing.
Right?
So would you say like, let's say, I don't want to say normal, when let's say things go back to where it was, would you say that you would definitely grab certain new approaches now, seeing these things and apply them to your in-person?
Yes, 100%. We are, as a society, not coming out healthier from this, more mentally than physically, I would say. So I think from an in-person practice, and I won't be returning to in-person until next year, because we've got some other business stuff that we're doing as a family. But me going back to in-person is I will be taking more time to sit with my clients and to really check in with them. How are you doing today, really? Like, how's your week been? What's your family been up to? How are you dealing with the world that we're now living in? What does that feel like for you? And really kind of honoring where somebody is, because I think when we tie it back to resiliency and longevity and recovery, people are going to need less. They're going to need less of the strenuous workouts. They're going to need parasympathetic response. They're going to need rest and digest and recovery. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to give them what they want, but what it means is that we need to be really doing our best work of like, hey, you have a nervous system that is sensitive. Globally, every nervous system on this planet is sensitive. It is purging trauma. It is in any way that we look at it. So being able to sit with me like, hey, so we're gonna do a longer warm up, we're gonna do a longer cool down. I also just want to take some time to reconnect, because we haven't been able to reconnect in person, if you got to hug elbows, whatever that looks like. So I think as we continue to move in, for me, I will be spending more time. I'll be training less hours. So instead of an hour, I'll be booking probably an hour to 75 minutes, so that I can ensure that I've got the time needed to really have those conversations. Even a 4 or 5 minute conversation of checking in, saying, hey, before we get to the floor, I just want to check in. Like, how you doing today? And literally ask that question, and what comes up for you?
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, and people are going to need it, and people are going to come to the table manning up, embracing the suck. They're going to come with that nice, I'm ready to hit it face. In here, it's not going to happen. In here, they're going to want the hugging in some capacity. Yeah. So I think we need to nurture both of that.
Mm-hmm. I think you hit it right on the head. The emotional side of things, the backing down, the de-stressing of our lives, because a lot of people do forget that exercise is a stress. Yeah. Even though it does elicit all of these amazing euphoric de-stressing aspects of our lives, it still in itself is a stress on the body, on the mind. So being able to kind of throttle things down in the future as we move forward and we kind of navigate this new landscape that we all have to live in, that's going to be super important to continue on moving forward. I want to spend the last couple of minutes because you have, touched upon some of the amazing projects that you have going on. You talked about your charity. Why don't you discuss a little bit about what you got going on with that, and then any other projects that you're currently working on, so that everyone can find out the amazing stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, it's been interesting because with Moveolution, it's had such a drastic change over the last, I'd say 5 years, moving into more pain education and putting some things online for, I've got a course, a 6-week course that trainers and coaches can take, that we deep dive into pain education. We deep dive into how to use corrective exercise and corrective modalities, restorative modalities in a training environment for active recovery, because I feel active recovery is the next big thing that needs to take over the industry, as we were talking about. Obviously have some products and stuff, but my charity work, you know, has been a godsend. I was exposed to giving back in some capacity at a very young age, going door to door with my dad, who's diabetic, for the Diabetes Association. The Run for a Cause was a 10-year project that I did in my 20s to 30s, raising $2 million for 57 different organizations.
Wow, that's
out
remarkable.
of that, yeah, thank you. And it was all small donations. It was just thousands of people coming out and running with me and doing the things. And so that was just a huge accomplishment for me. And I've been able to connect with so many different organizations that now, as a new mom, and as my husband and I are actually starting a coffee business, Kit's Coffee Company. So
yeah, you said that through email. I was excited to hear about that. I'm a massive coffee advocate. So
right, we love it. I will legitimately say we're coffee snobs. We have pour over. We've got different types of, like, we have literally everything to the gram, to the moment of the bloom, the extraction, like everything. We're doing coffee popsicles. We've had fun with recipes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're going to do a sustainable solar panel coffee cart at the beach.
That's great. Yeah, we'll have to make it up to Vancouver and come check that out in the summertime. I'm not going to. I grew up on the Canadian border on near Ontario. I'll come up in the summertime. I can't. I can't handle that tundra. Yeah, I can't handle that tundra anymore.
Every like just for the summertime. But we're super pumped.
Yeah, that's
because for me, being able to build this with my husband as a family as well, but also because of the landscape that we're in right now, especially with Black Lives Matter and BIPOC and supporting populations that have ancestrally just been screwed. I have done a huge amount of work with Indigenous populations here, specifically for Salish territory, and so to be able to have a coffee cart that sits on Salish land, unceded Salish land, and then be able to look at structuring a business that can then give back to these populations and to ocean conservation. And it's like, I'm just super jazzed about it. I get jazzed about that shit. So we've been deep diving into different organizations, having beautiful conversations to be able to create this very small family owned operation, and be able to somehow manage to give that back, and then also see where that leads. And what has also been just a beautiful blossoming of it, if we will, I'm looking at Moveolution and how am I supporting other communities, and as someone of privilege, be able to have those conversations and be able to give back locally. Charity is such a big part of my life. Other than that, I mean, I'm mommying all day long. So it's one day at a time, and I've got my online stuff, and I work with some online clients. I'm very selective with who I work with, and so that's kind of, it's just, I shower 3 times a week most of the time. Eat every night, going to the ocean. That's me. So.
Hey, it sounds like an amazing life to be living, and
it's fun.
If there's any way that we can ever help support you in your future endeavors, please let us know. I know that we'd be more than happy to do whatever we can, whether it be from here or, once we can make a trip up there, once everything kind of calms down, we would love to do that as well.
Definitely.
Sweet. Love to have you up. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I got to get some of those coffee popsicles.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we're going to need some of those. Yeah.
We're actually doing a coffee popsicle cold brew float.
Wow. That's going to be fire.
Baller.
Yeah, that's going to be fire.
It's just like, it's a party in your mouth.
Wow.
I love it.
Wow. Well, all right, Sarah. Well, let's wrap this up. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Until next time, guys.